Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to the most socially distant podcast in all of cyberspace, Made Man, where today I just finished watching episode 10 of season 7 of Mad Men, The Forecast, coming to you live from my sterilized bunker. Before we get started talking about this episode, why don't we take a moment to hear from today's sponsor. Oh, what a wonderful sponsor that was. And what a weird time this is, huh? It's just weird. I do two things. I work and I walk my dog, and that's about it. And I do it all basically within a mile radius of my house, which is wild. Wild, 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 wild times. But it's nice to take a moment and just kind of not think about the craziness going on in the world, but just focus on something entertaining. Something fun. Something like Mad Men. This episode started with some woman just showing up in Dawn's apartment. And my first thought was, oh, okay, this is Dawn's latest woman. But no. This was a realtor. A realtor showing up to the apartment. She was ready to show it. But she was kind of freaked out because there's no furniture in the house, just some patio furniture. He took the patio stuff from the deck and put it into the living room. And when she went into the bedroom, there was Dawn sleeping. And he's like, oh, well, I'm sorry. I must have overslept. And she's like, they're coming before work. I told the service, but you never called. There's no time for a shower. You need to get out of here right now. And I have to say, this entire episode, I thought, okay, by the end of this episode, Dawn is going to sleep with that woman, because that's usually how these things work. Spoiler alert, that never happened. Never happened. But Don got ready, got out, and it was before he got out, they had a little conversation. And he's basically telling her, you should be able to sell this without any furniture in here. And she's like, no, it looks lonely. It looks empty. And he's like, well, they can imagine their own things. And she's like, you need to replace your carpets. He's like, I got them cleaned. I don't have to do anything. He's like, I've sold uglier things than this in the past. And all she was she was just not into his BS. She's like, can you go? I don't want you walking by them. I don't want you going near them. I don't want you here when they get here. He's like, okay, good luck. And leaves her to the apartment. We jump over to Joan, who gets a wake-up call, and we find out that she's actually in L.A. She got a collect call from her mom, and her son called just to see how she was doing. And I feel like, why don't we just go through Joan's whole story right now? Because it is the B story of this episode. It's nice Joan character building, but nothing major, I think, happens as far as, well, a little thing does happen as far as the business and the world of Mad Men is concerned. Joan is in L.A. for interviews. She's out there to interview people, and we find that Lou Avery is still out there. I didn't even realize he was still working. He's still with the business. He's out there, and he is like, oh, yeah, I already read about the interviews. I already prepped. You already prepped. We don't need to prep together. I need to get going. And I have some other things I have to take care of. See you back here at noon. And she was like, okay, I guess that's fine. So later, she comes in, and a guy walks in for the interview, and Joan's like, oh, are you Mr. McCann or whatever, something like that. Can't be McCann. McCann is McCann Erickson. Are you Mr. whatever, McNeely? And he's like, yes, I am. But then Lou walks in with the actual real guy, and I realize this guy is just trying to impress Joan. And he was like, let me ask you to dinner. And she seemed to accept. Later on in the episode, but before Lou got back, Joan came into the office, and she's like, or came back to the office. She's like, he's not here yet. Where is he? She's like, I'm sorry. Mr. Avery's been very busy. He's trying to work on something big. She's like, with what? It's like, well, I shouldn't say, but it's Hanna-Barbera. He's like, oh, as a client, the cartoon company? And he's like, yes, for his cartoon strip. He's been working on it since college. She's like, how long has this been going on? He's been working on it since he was in the Army. I remember the whole joke that, what's his name? Stan found it, and it was like a Beetle Bailey type thing. So he's out there while he should be working for the company doing his personal work, and I feel like that's going to come up again. It didn't come up again in this episode at all, but I think it's going to come up again with something. Joan coming back, or Lou is going to do something that's going to piss Joan off, and Joan's going to blab it, I think, or use it against him. I hope, because nobody likes Lou. So we don't actually see the interview. We don't actually know what's going on there. But the guy that she that pretended to be the interviewee, he was like, well, I have a chance to talk to someone like you. I don't want to pass that up. His smooth ways worked on her because they hooked up and they did sex. And, she's in town for work and they're talking and he's like, I'm divorced. And she's like, I'm not married. I've been divorced too. And she's like, I have kids. They've grown. They're on their, they're out of the house. And she goes, are you out here because you have mouths to feed? And she's like, nope, no, I don't. And that was it. That's how they left it. I think they hooked up maybe once or twice. And then she's back in New York and she gets a call and he's there. He's in town. And they meet for dinner. They have a nice time, having a nice dinner. And he notices that she glances at her watch. And he's like, oh, what's his name? What time do you have to get home to him? She's like, no, you don't understand. I have a child. I have a little one at home. His name's Kevin. He's 4 years old. He's like, oh, a real little one. She's like, is that a problem? He goes, no, not at all. They go back to the hotel room. They're going to probably do sex some more. She's like, just let me make a phone call first. She calls the babysitter and gets the woman to stay till about midnight because her mother was out of town. And the guy, who I definitely recognize the actor, I can't think of his name. I don't know his name, but I feel like I'll know his name when I see his name. I want to say Tim Matheson. But no, it's not him. I know it's not him because I just looked it up, and it's Bruce Greenwood, which I never would have guessed his name, but when I see it, I'm like, yes, I recognize that name. And he's just one of those guys that you've seen him in a million things. I would never know his name, but I've seen him in a million things. And she's like, he's like, oh, do you need to leave? She's like, no, I have all the time in the world. He goes, well, you have until midnight. And she was like, is that going to be a problem? He's like, look, I need to tell you the truth. It is a problem. I did that already. I already had kids in my life. She's like, well, you're getting pretty presumptuous. He's like, look, I already did that. And if I want to take you to the pyramids, I can't take you to the pyramids. I can't, you can't just do that. She's like, no, I can't. And she left. They kind of got in a fight or whatever. She's like, obviously this isn't going to work. And so she leaves. The next day we see her son watching Sesame Street. The girl shows up again, and the babysitter, and Joan's like, oh, I have to keep going. I have to get going. What took you so long? And she's like, she's like, I had class, or why didn't you say something before? Well, I'm sorry, your mother's on vacation or whatever. And then Joan looks at the babysitter holding her son and says, you're ruining my life. And I have to say, I thought she was saying it to her son. Like, why would she say this to the babysitter? I feel like, was she kind of saying it to her son? Did she feel like she was saying it to her son? That's what I kind of thought, which was like, I was like, oh my God. And then she's leaving and he's, bye, mama. And then he stops and she's feeling guilty. And she's like, bye, Kevin. See you later. I don't know why I said that in a British kind of accent. She's at work and there's a buzz-in from her secretary saying, Mr. McNeely is here, which was the name that the guy said he was. She comes out and he's holding flowers. And he's like, I'm sorry. He apologizes. She's like, no, you're right. I'm going to send my son away. He's like, what? He goes, you want me to choose between you and my son, so I'm choosing you. Now, she was being sarcastic. And he was like, no, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I meant. I'm a heel. I'm sorry. I want you to be part of my life, all of you. She's like, I live with my mother. She goes, well, I'm going to be buying real estate up here. Where do you live? On 12th Street. He's like, well, I'm not going to be buying real estate there, but I will be buying real estate in a nice area, which was kind of subtly insulting, in a nice area, and I'd love you all to visit sometime. Can I call you? She's like, you can. And that was it. No kiss or anything. He just left, gave her flowers. And I think that was the end. Is that the end of Joan's kind of thing? So the big thing is she has an older gentleman who she seems to really like. And, you know, I think it was like they both said that they really felt something. So maybe there is something that's going to happen here. But the big thing for me is what's going to happen with Lou in this thing where he's been trying to get a cartoon made of his comic strip with Hanna-Barbera. That, to me, is the most important thing that came out of this, because anything that could make Luke bad. Look, there's no duck for me. There's no duck here for me to crap on. So without Duck, I can crap on Lou. Lou's still here. I can still crap on him. Harry wasn't even in this episode. He was mentioned once, but he wasn't in this episode at all. There was no Harry. There was no Megan. There was no Ken. There was no Henry, even though no Stan. There was a lot of people that weren't in this episode. But that was really it for Joan. Why don't we jump over now to Sally and Betty? Yes, there was no Harry Francis in the episode, but Mrs. Francis was, she had a part in this episode. See, Sally is going to be going away with some of the girls from work, going on a retreat where she sees 12 states in 12 days. And Betty, and I think she's teaching her how to fill out traveler's checks. That's what I think they were. Money. So when you're traveling, I don't even know if traveler's checks is still a thing. I just remember when I was a kid in the 80s, American Express traveler's checks were the way to go. Like, if you wanted to travel, don't bring cash with you, bring traveler's checks. I don't even know what that is. It's like, I guess, a check that you can use to get money down there without bringing money with you. I don't know, but that's what I feel like it is. And I don't even know if it's a traveler's check, so I might just be talking out of my butt. But Sally, it was awesome because Betty was telling her, I did this trip and it was only 6 states. She's like, oh, well, weren't they just called colonies back then? And they actually had a nice little conversation, like sarcastic Sally, but Betty was smiling and, wasn't like being a jerk about Sally's tone. And, she said, there are also going to be boys on this trip. Well, she said, we used to get in trouble and smash light bulbs on the hotel floor. I was like, Jesus, that's vandalism. And so I was like, we're not going to do that. She's like, there are also boys on this that are out there. So, I just want you to be smart. And Sally's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mother. This conversation is a little too late. And so am I. Sally is the best. Sally is one of my favorite, if not my favorite characters on this show, because she has the morals that both her parents seem to lack, or the decency or common sense, something about him where she is almost the parent. She's almost more mature than Dawn and Betty. And she has to, it's like, this is her life steering around these crazy mad men and women. Thank you, everybody. That's the show. Goodbye forever. See, I just love Sally. And there's some other great Sally lines in this episode. So I'm going to jump ahead with more Sally. Stay on this whole thing. She gets a knock on the door and she's like, I'll get it. And she opens the door and it's this young, suave man with a hairy chest, a groovy shirt, some cool sideburns, and oh my God, it's Glenn. Wait, actually it was, wait a minute, was it Glenn? Yeah. I'm so confused because he met Loretta, the maid, but then, I don't know, it doesn't make a difference. At one point, but he was like really polite to Loretta, the maid, and he's like, I'm here to see Betty or Sally, and it's Glenn, and Sally's got, then Glenn's girlfriend comes in, and there's nothing, like, there's no jealousy, where Sally and Glenn are just friends. They've always been just friends. That's just kind of the way they've always been. And something about Glenn where he's such an odd, the way the actor, now I don't know what else he's done. I don't know if he's a good actor. I don't know if this is just the way he is. Like, I don't know if I look this guy up and he's been in a ton of things, or he's just been Glenn. So they keep going back to him because they need Glenn back. And he's like, he's just had this weird, like, just his delivery is very blank and very much like, hello, Sally, how are you? How's it going? But remember when he showed up at our school, was it earlier this year or last year? And he beat up his own friend because his friend was messing around with Sally. That's because he was like the big brother. That's how he's always been. They never had, but I guess he did like her because remember they vandalized the house and he left a bracelet for her. But really, all this time, maybe he was pining for another. Oh, we'll get there. So Glenn comes in and they're talking and they're saying, hey, we're going to be going to Playland. We wanted to know if you wanted to come. And then Betty comes in and sees the girlfriend and she's like, oh, why don't you introduce me? And he's like, I'm Glenn. I used to be your neighbor. And she's like, what? And I have to say, she seemed a little smitten with him. See, like, and they're talking, and all of a sudden, you can see Sally kind of looking between the two of them, like, what the hell is going on here? And you could see that Glenn is like, I have your hair. It's in my pocket. I have kept it in my wallet since you gave it to me as a boy, and I've come for the rest of you. That's what I felt like. I felt like Glenn still has her hair. And Sally's like, what is going on here? And then he's like, I also came to say goodbye. And she's like, what's up? I've enlisted. And Sally is pissed. He joined the army. He's shipping off to Vietnam. And he didn't get drafted. He joined. She's like, what about Kent State? You were crying. And he says, what am I supposed to stay here while the young Negro men get killed for us? He goes, it's anti-American. It's not right. You know, he's feeling like he's doing a duty for the men and the soldiers going over there. She's like, you're just a kid. You're a young man. You're barely the same. You'll be the same age as the kids you over in Vietnam that you kill. And she storms off. Betty seemed more like, that's very nice of you. That's very American. That's very good. But also slightly attracted to this 18-year-old boy, which, is wrong and creepy. And it's not the last time that Sally is going to see someone looking at a friend, or I shouldn't say that, or a friend looking at someone. Because Sally gets to do that again in this episode. Now, I'm trying to think what else happens. So Sally ends up later calling Glenn's mother. Glenn's not there. Sally's leaving tomorrow for a trip. She's really upset because she didn't get a chance. She wants to apologize to Glenn. She wants to say goodbye to Glenn. She wanted to apologize. She needs him to call. She's like, I'm sorry. And she starts crying. She's like, I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to make you cry. She's making the mother cry. If you remember, his mother is the divorcee. The divorcee from season 1. I don't know where she is. We never see her again. But we see Glenn constantly. And he's lost a little weight. He's skinny. He's got sideburns. He is one cool dude. Or cool hippie, I guess. I don't know. But Sally is off. Sally's gone. Sally is heading off with her girls. She's leaving that morning. And she's out by the time Glenn comes back. But he's like, oh, hi. And she's like, Sally's gone. He's like, I know. Can I get that drink? Can I get a drink? How about that beer? Because remember, he's 18. And the drinking age then is 18. I forget when it changed to 21. I remember Dazed and Confused. It was still 18 because they were 18. But, yeah. So she gives him that beer, and he's like, I forget what he said exactly, but he put the moves on her. He tries to get Betty Draper, and she's like, Glenn, no, we can't. And he's like, why? Now, she didn't say because I'm twice your age, because I am Sally's mother, because it's inappropriate. She simply says, because I'm married. Which is a valid answer. It is correct. She is married, and this would be adultery. And I guess that would be the first thing you say. But it's I want her to be like, for a myriad of reasons, a number of reasons. First of which, I'm married. Second of which, you're a child. Third of which, you are a friend of my daughter's. Yes, my daughter, who is almost your age. So, I mean, all these things adding up, Glenn really, I mean, it almost seemed like if Betty wasn't married, she'd be like, I'm going to send you off to the army with quite the going away party. But luckily, she didn't do that. And then I thought it was going to happen again, because he starts telling the truth. He's like, he goes, no, this would make it all worth it. And she's like, wait, you didn't do this for me, did you? He goes, no, worse. I flunked out. He flunked out of college. So that's really why he joined the army. Not just to do the good, but he's like, I flunked out. And he said his stepfather would have killed him. He goes, my mother's mad, Sally's mad, but you're not mad. He goes, well, they're just scared, and I'm scared too. And then he tells her that he flunked out and his father-in-law would kill him. But when I told him he joined the army, he was so proud of me, and he got all upset. And then Betty ran her fingers through his hair like, it's okay, little boy. And I thought, uh-oh, here it comes. And then she takes his hand and puts it on her face, like, at least you get to touch my face. At this point, I wish she took a pair of scissors out and cut more hair off for him. That didn't happen, but I thought, what is going on here? That's still kind of inappropriate and weird. And with that, Glenn left. So while that was the end of the Glenn storyline, Sally's storyline had one final stop, and that was with Dad, dear old Dad, and some of her friends. They were at a diner getting food before heading off on their bus trip. And all the girls seemed to be really interested in Don. Everything he said made them giggle. And one of the friends was very much like a little too giggly. She's like rubbing the rim of her glass. And she's like, do you mind if he lights a cigarette for her? She's like, oh, so you have a really nice house, huh? You live in what do you want to do? He's saying to the girls. One girl's like, I want to be a senator. One girl's like, I want to be a UN translator. And the third girl's like, I want to live in New York. I think she's like, I just want to live in New York. And he's like, he goes, how did you get into advertising? He goes, I didn't even know what advertising was. I just wanted to get into New York. Oh, no, he says, find what you love, as a kid. And she's like, did you love advertising or something like that? And he's like, I just wanted to get to New York. I didn't even know what advertising was. And now you have a penthouse, a real nice apartment. Where do you live? Oh, where do you live, Dawn? Up on the Upper East Side. In a penthouse? Yeah. And Sally's like, yeah, he was poor, though, growing up. But now you have a penthouse? He's like, yeah, I do. And it was interesting because Sally could see, again, one of her parents being flirted with by one of her friends. Twice in one episode she sees this. And he's like, what do you want to do, Sally? She's like, I just want to eat. And you could see she was kind of getting annoyed. They leave on the bus, or they're about to leave on the bus. And they're like, bye, Mr. Draper, bye, Dawn. And Sally's like, bye. And he goes, Sally, wait. He goes, I'll wait from the car. He goes, I forget exactly what he said, but she's like, you just can't help yourself, can you? He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you and Mom are she's 17 years old. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's fast. I just didn't want to insult her. She's like, you and, any little attention. and you ooze, no matter who they are. You're just like Mom. Same thing with Mom. And he was like, almost like, what are you talking, Mom? Something happened with Mom? She's like, the both of you are the same way. Any little attention, and you guys are this way. He goes, I'm going to go on this bus and pretend I'm not like you. And she tries to storm off, and he takes her by the arm, and he's like, listen, young lady, I'm your father. And whether you like it or not, you are like your mother and me. Okay? You're a very beautiful girl. It's up to you to be more than that. And I was like, oh, I think he was almost saying, look, we are good looking. We are a good looking family, but it's up to us to be more than that. And I think that's it for Sally. But hey, yeah, Dawn, why don't we use this moment to jump way back and talk about Dawn's day. Okay? So after he leaves the apartment, he goes into work and goes into Roger's office. And it seems like McCann Erickson is throwing some sort of big conference retreat, something. It's in the Bahamas. And, of course, Roger's going to go and speak. But they need like a statement, a manifesto of the status, the future of Sterling Cooper. And it needs to be 2,500 words, and Don needs to write it. And it's like, but I guess he's getting Harry to write something about computers, and Ted is writing something about performance reviews or something like that, but he needs Don to write his Gettysburg Address. And that's really it right there, right? The forecast. That's the title of this episode. That's your meaning right there. The forecast, what's coming, what's ahead, what's the future going to be. And it's funny because Don kind of, he doesn't know himself. At some point he's talking to Meredith. I remember her name, Meredith, his secretary. Who is awesome. Like, he's dictating stuff. He's talking to her. What do you think the future is going to be like? He asks, he goes in and talks to Ted about it. And Ted's like, oh, Roger tried to get me to do the same thing. And they start talking about the future. And he's like, what do you think the future is going to be like? And Don is like, Ted's like, he wants his big desire. His big desire is to land a pharmaceutical. And he's like, okay, but then what? And then later he's talking to Peggy about what do you think the future is going to hold. Now, she came in looking for a performance review. She's like, I need to talk to you. Ted wants me to write my own performance review. And he's like, oh, you're lucky. And she's like, no, I want my review. I want an actual performance review. I did a lot this year. So she asked him to do it. He doesn't actually get it because he starts talking about the future. And what do you think the future is going to have? We talked to her a little bit about it. She's like, well, I'd like to be the first female creative director. I'd like to say, I'd like to come up with something that sticks. I'd like to make a lasting kind of something, something that matters. And he's like, in advertising? She's like, well, ask me about my job, not about the world. And he goes, well, okay, that's fine. She goes, well, why don't you tell me your dreams? And so I can shit all over them. It was like, she never got the performance review, but it was Don's way. Don was asked to look at the future of this company, of Sterling Cooper. And it almost seemed like he was trying to do that, but he was also looking at his future. Like, what is the future holding for any of them? Like, what are we doing? He's talking to Meredith, and she's like, I think it's going to look like the World's Fair. Like, I think she was actually thinking about the future. And he's like, oh, what was your favorite part? And they never got there. But that seemed to be the big thing for Don. Like, what is the future? What does the future hold? The work thing going on, the big job at the office is Peter Pan cookies. They want Don to come in and look at the Peter Pan cookie. Pete's like, I need you to look at this. Comes in, and they're called Tinkerbell cookies using Peter Pan peanut butter, and they have this idea for Dear John letters to kids. Like, kids are writing Dear John letters to other cookies, like Oreo, we have to split, or Nilla wafers, you're too boring, or something like that. Because they're all moving on to Tinkerbell cookies. Later on in the episode, Pete comes in pissed off, and he's like, the cookie pitch, it didn't go well. The guys, they ended up turning on each other. That's Mathis and Ed. And Mathis ended up, using the F word. He swore in the meeting. And Peggy's like, it's fine. They didn't like the creative. That's fine. He's like, something has to be done. She's like, well, you can't fire my men. And Pete's like, I could fire you if I want to. Don's like, nobody's getting fired. He seemed to calm them down. He goes, look, you can't replace them because then it looks weak. It feels like we're starting over. So we just got to get the work done. And Peggy seemed satisfied. They both stormed away. Later on in the episode, Mathis comes into the office with a bottle of wine or a bottle of something. And he's like, I want to thank you, Don, for having my back. And I was like, who told you that? He didn't really have his back as much as he just thought it was the right thing to do. He's like, what do I do? Do I apologize? He's like, look, if you apologize, it makes you look wrong. If you don't show up, it's not good. He goes, and he told the story about the time he was with Lucky Strike and he screwed up. And then he came back and the first thing he did was, he said to Lucky Strike, I can't believe you want to see me again after you guys making asses out of yourself. He basically broke the ice, and he said that's what worked with them. And then he's like, I don't know, bring a bar of soap and say you brought it so in case you need it, in case you accidentally speak out again. He's like, it's not like they haven't heard the word before. Now Mathis goes into the meeting. And he goes and uses the exact same line. I can't believe you two guys would show your face here again after making asses of yourself again. Mathis comes into the office all pissed off at Don. I was like, what's going on here? What are you doing? And he's like, I did your thing, and it didn't work. He's like, he's like, I talked to Roger about this, and he said it's because the guy was in love with you, and he wanted to jerking off thinking about you, something like that, wasn't it? Something like that. And Don's like, you have a foul mouth, and he's like, it doesn't matter. You just did this. You got your way because you're handsome. He's like, he's like, everyone has problems, and you have to deal with it. He goes, I just know how to do things right. And he's like, by the way, I don't have to tell you, you're fired. So he goes, I figured that coming in here when I stormed in. So Mathis, I just learned his name a couple episodes ago. Fired, gone, boom, outski. Oh my God. We only have 4 episodes after this. This is crazy. Earlier in the episode, Don went back to his apartment and saw that the realtor didn't have any luck that day. She's like, look, and she gives it right to him. And he's like, this is empty. It looks sad. It looks like a sad man lives here. He's like, a lot of great things happened here. She goes, it looks like a divorce happened here. And you're living out of here because you're divorced. Because we had a guy come today. It was like a young family. And they couldn't see it. It just didn't work. And she's like, it looks like an $85,000, sad house. Or whatever she said. I don't remember exactly. But she stormed off like, you need to change this. I don't know, she was angry. And I still thought at this moment, oh my God, Don is going to sleep with this woman. And I'm like, why do I recognize her? And I believe she is one of the neighbors on Fresh Off the Boat, which is a show that just ended, which actually was a pretty good show. It's a sitcom, but it was actually quite funny, underrated. So I'm like, I'm trying to think what else happened with Don. I mean, he was trying to figure out what's going on. He talked to Ted about the future, talked to Peggy about the future, tried to talk to Meredith about the future. He couldn't quite get his grasp on where things are going. And I felt like he was looking for someone else to give him something to inspire him because he couldn't figure it out himself. And, he fires Mathis, and I feel like that is about 90% of what he did. I don't know if I'm missing anything. There was nothing. He didn't have any interaction with Joan, I don't believe. So and then the ending, he comes into his apartment and he's like, oh, hello. And the realtor's there with a young married couple who are expecting, and they're signing paperwork. And she's like, oh, excuse me. She takes Don out from the front door and out to the front door. And she goes, we did it. They signed. Congratulations. She goes, now I need to find you a place to live. And closes the door to go finish signing the paperwork. And last episode, the photo I used with Don standing alone in his apartment, like, everything's gone. And this episode, I think I'm using the photo of him standing alone again. I wonder if there's going to be a lot of Don standing alone. Standing alone outside his apartment now. He's like, what does the future hold? What is the forecast? For me, never mind the company, I think he's looking for something for himself. What the hell is he going to do with the rest of his life? He's looking at these people and they're asking, what are your desires? What are you thinking? And they're talking about pharmaceuticals or landing a big client. And Don's like, that's it? I think he was almost like, looking for something more than just advertising. And now his nice apartment is gone. I don't know what that means. Does he want something smaller? He's got the money. It's like, it's crazy because you feel like he's divorced now, and he's ready to go on and do, like, he's got rid of the apartment. It's like he's got money. I don't know what's going to happen. There are doors that could be opening for him. There are just possibilities that could be opening for him. And I don't know what's going to be, but as far as I can tell, we only have 4 episodes left. I think I covered everything, except, of course, Bobby running around the house with a machine gun and Betty taking it from him because letting him go watch Brady Bunch. She takes the little toy gun. Actually, it was a Tommy gun. Takes the little toy gun and throws it away. And I think it's, it was basically thinking Glenn's going off to war. We shouldn't be playing with these little toys like this, while real young men are out there. So, are we going to ever find out what happens to Glenn? I don't know. Are we going to see Sally on her trip? I tend to think so. I mean, they have her and her friends getting on the boat. I feel like we will see them doing something on their trip. Ted's big thing is hopefully they can get a tire company because they know so much about cars, and a pharmaceutical. That seemed to be his dream, which was very boring. Pete is just always upset, always annoyed, but he's Pete, Lou. Joan, maybe she found someone that she is that she can actually build a relationship with. I don't know. I'm sorry, but Joan was married twice and divorced twice. Why do I not remember? So she had okay, wait. She divorced. She was already divorced when she was with the army guy? Was there a guy? Did I miss something? I didn't, right? I'm like completely drawing a blank because Joan talked about having 2 divorces. And we saw her with Roger. We saw her, this is years and years ago. Well, in the show. Then she had her boyfriend. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's crazy how this show has changed over the years. The business has changed. The employees have changed. There are people that we don't even see anymore. A lot of them made it back. A lot of them made it over, but not all of them. This is just, it's wild. It's wild and wacky. And I can't think of if we know both her divorces, which is wild. I said wild a lot, but we live in wild times. Wild, wacky, crazy times. I'm home. I'm always home. Everyone's always home now. I leave to walk my dog, and that's it. And sorry it took me a couple extra days to get this episode out. Hopefully this weekend will be a little better. We shall see. But, with only so many episodes left, it's just, it's so hard to say goodbye to Sterling Cooper. Oh boy. I'm still not a fan of Roger's mustache. I will say that. But his sideburns, he was really not in this episode at all this much. He was in the beginning talking about going to the Bahamas, and that was it. I wonder if we'll see him in the Bahamas. Probably not. But I think I'm rambling now. I think I'm done. And yeah, Glenn, Godspeed, young man. We'll see. We'll see. With only 4 episodes left, you feel like anything is possible. If they wanted to, they could jump ahead a year, say 1 year later. And be like, whoa, okay. They've done it before. They could do it again. And I don't know. We shall see. I've already said that. So I think it's time for me to say that I want to thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for staying with us all this time. It is amazing. I really appreciate it. And guys, I want you to stay safe. Stay socially distant and stay at home. Stay at home and stay subscribed as I continue this journey. This journey that only has 4 episodes left. As I get ready to say goodbye, I want to say thank you for listening. And thank you for coming along with me as I strive to become a made man. Fans not experts. Wash your hands.